Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Chuck Gardner, and with me is Callie Dean. And we're here to, at this point, display our webinar on the state of cyber education. Callie and I and Kevin recorded this webinar yesterday due to a storm coming through the area today. You might have heard of it, Hurricane Laura. Just downgraded to a tropical storm. Some of us still have power and internet, so with that, we're going to play the webinar. We're going to take questions during the event. Callie and I will be live with Claire, and we'll be taking questions. And when the video is done, it runs about 35 minutes. We'll come back and we'll answer any questions that were left during the session. So with that, I'm going to turn my camera off, and I'll ask Callie to do the same so it's an undisturbed presentation from the video. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Callie Dean. I'm the Academic Outreach Coordinator at cyber.org.
I'm Kevin Knowlton, Director of Academic Outreach for cyber.org.
I'm Dr. Chuck Gardner, the Director of Curriculum for cyber.org.
We're thrilled to be here with you guys today. One of our main goals here at cyber.org is to provide cybersecurity education to every K-12 student in the United States so that we can build and sustain a pipeline of students to fill the cybersecurity workforce gap. You may or may not know the cybersecurity workforce gap is large and it's growing. By 2022, there are projected to be 1.8 million jobs that are unfilled. So that's where cyber.org comes in and trying to make sure that all students have access to cybersecurity education. Earlier this year, we went looking for some kind of research to figure out what the landscape of K-12 cybersecurity education looks like. And what we found is that there's a huge lack of data about what this looks like. So we worked with Edweek's research team to commission a report about the state of cybersecurity education in the United States. You can find the full report on our website, but we're excited to be here today to share the results with you. Let's dive in. I've got a PowerPoint I'm going to share. All right, so one of the major findings that we found is something called Cybersecurity Deserts. That was something that was identified by the Edweek research team. And so they defined a cybersecurity desert as a community without access to cybersecurity resources. So those resources could include things like cybersecurity companies or other companies that employ cybersecurity specialists. Universities that have cybersecurity programs or do research in cybersecurity. So communities that don't have access to these resources tend to have less access to cybersecurity education. And these deserts tend to be disproportionately rural and poor. So Kevin and Chuck, how have you guys seen this dynamic play out in communities across the United States?
One of the things that I would call attention to is communities that are developing ecosystems that are focused on a cybersecurity workforce, a cybersecurity education program that's leading to students obtaining either degrees or jobs in this space, in the cybersecurity space. And, you know, one of the examples that I look at is, you know, a region in northern Louisiana that we happen to be headquartered in, but as cyber.org, but it's the National Cyber Research Park and the Cyber Innovation Center. And what the focus with this National Cyber Research Park was bringing together a group of individuals that represent industry, government, higher education, and K-12. And they together come and begin formulating and creating a plan for the diversification of an economic base. When Callie mentioned these cybersecurity deserts, that means there's no industry there, or no noticeably or significant big industry there that's primary focus is on cybersecurity. And we'll talk about later, you know, obviously that everybody's focus should be cybersecurity, but this ecosystem model has been replicated in parts of the country, and that any community, no matter how large or how small, can take and bring together these types of efforts and this type of energy.
Yeah, Kevin, you bring up a good point. Also, it's important to note that this doesn't happen overnight. This is something that takes a lot of investment in time and resources and bringing partners together. I mean, how long did the CIC operation in Bossier take? It's a 8-9 year process now, right? And
Yeah.
when we look at our partners in North Dakota who have established a K-20W pathway, bringing those partners from primary, secondary, higher ed together, they're going on their 3rd year now of relationship building and standards development and content identification, and this whole vertical partnership. It is truly an ecosystem that has to come together to support this kind of a cyber academic development.
It's a long game for sure. And many people think of immediate solutions. And when you think of a workforce, you think about, if I invest in a high school student, how long is it going to be until I get a return on that investment? It's going to be more than election cycle. It's going to be more than an overnight fix. It's going to be a multi-year, process fix that we're going to see the results, but we're going to see it in a long term, in a long game perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it takes time, but it also takes all the cooperation of all these different industries. I think that's another thing that really distinguishes that ecosystem concept, is that it pulls in, government, higher ed, K-12, schools, industry. And so, I know that we are based in Bossier City, Louisiana, but we go all over the country and helping other communities to help develop their ecosystems, whatever that looks like for them. So can you talk a little bit about what that does look like in different communities across the country?
Yeah, I mean, we're in the education space, and as recovering educators, as I like to call it in the classroom, we often think about, we have to go to the K-12 or the education departments to solve this. But in cases like, Montana, for instance, it's the state CIO who has taken up the flag and said, hey, this is a priority. This is a focus that we as a state need to look at and hone in on, and not so much from an education standpoint, but from an infrastructure and security standpoint. Folks like their CIO realizes that our issues are national security issues, and from an information technology standpoint, they're just as much as invested in the solution set, which is a K-12 education program, as their Department of Education.
Yeah, and right, they're not the experts in the space inside that classroom. They have the bigger picture appreciation. They have the relationship building appreciation. But when you talk about this ecosystem development, it comes down also to being able to show up with resources and to say, okay, we can support your teachers. We can get them moving in the classroom on day one when these relationships kick off. And we think about a couple of different implementation models that we might suggest. There are locations that might want a whole school to adopt, or a whole system of elementary, middle, high school feeders to adopt this cyber perspective. Let's do a K-12, K-20W perspective and expect adoption across the board. But then there's also going to be the model where, they don't have either, we're going to talk a little bit about resources, but there's one reason or another that they can't adopt this wholesale across their level of partners. So let's identify a classroom that we can start in. We can have some discussions. We've got curriculum to support both edges of that kind of a relationship building process.
Right, and you talk about the ownership, and that K-20W is a great example of power and strength in numbers. When group gets together, and I remember when we first started with the North Dakota K-20W project, I mean, we had a room of 5 people. There were folks sitting around a little tiny table that says, hey, I think we need to do something about this workforce challenge, and then that number has grown grown from 50 to 100. I think there's 125 people sitting in a room, and the strength that board, that group, that committee has, and the influence that it has in creating a workforce and creating change within a state agency and a state Department of Education, like North Dakota Department of Public Instruction, in 18 months developed and published computer science and cyber science standards at the K-12 level. That's incredible what a body of a group like that can do when they're all marching towards the same goal.
There's a saying, I think, Kevin, that you've uttered more than once. You've seen one state department of education. You've seen one state department of education. North Dakota is definitely what I would consider a fast mover in that space.
Right. And they're a model to look at, and, when you look at that Edweek report, just as Callie mentioned up at the beginning of the hour, what can we do? How do we do it? And I think, what we need to look at is how can each state take these ideas and these best practices that are established by a Montana or a Louisiana or an Arkansas or a North Dakota or a Virginia, and they take bits and pieces of that and they replicate that in their own state.
Learn from the best.
Yeah, and I think, the other thing that I think really resonates about the ecosystem concept is that it really does benefit the entire community. These investments that we're making in K-12 education are going to pay off for everybody in the community now and in the future. We've talked a lot about state work, and we do, as cyber.org, we work a lot with state departments of education and, the state CIOs. But we also, our bread and butter is working with teachers. And I think it's really important not to lose sight of that for teachers who are in, what might be considered a cybersecurity desert, or who might not have access to a statewide initiative that's bringing cybersecurity education to their state, that there's still ways that they can bring this in. I'm going to pull up one other graphic from the report that shows that, just under half of teachers that were surveyed in this report said that their students had access to any kind of cybersecurity education. So there's still a long way to go. And we know that this can be inequitable, not just among states, but even within individual communities. So what would you guys, say to that lone teacher who's trying to figure out what, maybe their first step should be?
Yeah. Integration of cyber themed curricula can happen in a variety of different models at any different level. Like I mentioned before, districts, entire vertical teams, or a classroom conversation that is touching on a cyber subject, or can be wrapped around a recent cyber event. If I'm doing current events in a classroom, for example, why not do current events about cyber and bring up some cybersecurity websites and some cybersecurity news feeds and start having those conversations in the classroom. But then we can also talk about full implementation in a high school scale, on a middle school scale, or elementary, middle, high school feeder, and begin conversations in the 3rd and 4th grade that are going to evolve throughout a student's academic experience on up until high school, when they're graduating with multiple credentials, very attractive to entry-level organizations that hopefully are in their community by then, or even to a 2-year or 4-year degree program that's going to benefit them and their studies that have carried them through that school system.
Yeah, certainly that can be top down or it can be bottom up. Either way can kind of start to make those waves. I hear you talk, and we're kind of surrounded by it, and it feels easy to us, but we know that it's not that easy, or everybody would be doing this. Let's talk for a few minutes about some of the barriers that we hear from our teachers, and these are even the really willing and excited teachers who are still encountering barriers in their classroom environments as they try to implement this. Sure.
I think the graphic you had, or one of the areas in this report, indicates that 10% of teachers claim to know a lot about cybersecurity, and we understand, right? Teachers probably aren't entering the profession because they're cybersecurity professionals, right? There's more to it as to what makes you a teacher, what makes you a good teacher. So we accept that teachers aren't going to be the content experts in cybersecurity. We want to provide those resources that are going to help them have these conversations, begin to scratch the surface, and get a student concerned and aware of what's happening in cyber. So the resources that we have, again, are conversation starters, discussion questions, focused study opportunities and research opportunities, but then we've also got, deep hitting, malicious practice on events in a cyber range where students are actually going to work through labs attacking other platforms. They're safe and sandboxed. We're not putting school IT networks at risk, but we've got some of these resources that are ready for students, ready for teachers off the shelf to implement in the classroom. classroom. So, if knowledge or comfort level of the content is a problem, we'd encourage you to take a look and look at some of the resources that are out there, because they're gonna be great conversation starters for the classroom.
Yeah, and Callie, to your point, about if it's easy, why is not many more teachers doing it? And Chuck spelled it out there. And what some of the things that I've been able to see is that a teacher's knowledge, if a teacher doesn't have knowledge on cybersecurity education, doesn't mean that they can't, but it potentially means that they just don't have the confidence to do it. Remember, if you're a math teacher or an English language arts teacher or a science teacher, and somebody comes up to you and says, "Hey, I want you to teach cybersecurity, or I want you to integrate cybersecurity into the to the lesson," you'd be heading to the door. You'd be like, "I don't know if I can do that or not." And so I think that what is impactful and meaningful with regards to the professional development that is available. There are some great organizations out there that offer PD. And if you get a chance to jump into that PD opportunity, whether it's through a hardware company like Parallax, whether it's through a curriculum organization like cyber.org, or with any other organization that is out there, this professional development opportunity just instills confidence in you as an educator to say, I can do that. And I've gone around the country using this one little simple example is, Sally has 3 apples at the house. She has 5 friends coming over. How many apples does Sally need to go out and buy? Well, if I'm a math teacher, I'm going to ask you, why do you teach apples? Kids know what apples are in the 2nd grade. Why don't you teach gigabytes instead of apples? And Sally has 3 gigabytes on her computer right now. She has a program she wants to rerun. It requires 5. How many gigabytes does Sally need to add? And we talk about gigabytes as similar to a computer. Similar to your brain, your mind. And Callie, if I'm telling you the sky is blue, the clouds are gray, the winds are strong, the dogs bark, the cows meow, and Chuck asks you, what's 10 minus 15? And you're like, it's -5, but can you process all that information? This is where math teachers can begin teaching fundamentals and concepts of cybersecurity in the classroom. This is where science teachers can do the same. This is where ELA teachers can do the same. So though, teachers may not have the direct knowledge of what hacking is, or what how malware works, or how phishing works, what they can do is they can begin getting students to understand the foundational concepts that allow students to begin to explore. So confidence, that's what we have to focus on. And my sign just fell down.
I have a quick question. So Kevin and I, we can talk all day about how, the fact that we want to increase teachers' confidence, we want to increase teachers' knowledge, but as the one who studies the data that comes out of these workshops, is it working? Are we changing teachers' expectations or abilities in the classroom?
Yeah, and that's exactly where I was going, is that, in order for a teacher to be able to teach, these new kinds of metaphors and new contexts, they have to know what they are, and then they have to have the confidence to do that. And that's a place where our data really is strong. The teachers that have attended our professional development workshops have consistently seen huge increases in their confidence level when it comes to how to integrate cyber into the classroom, how to teach with their current level of STEM and cyber knowledge. We're seeing them grow just immensely from start to finish. And I think in our most recent evaluation, we found that almost all of our teachers are saying that they've learned more about cyber education, that we've transformed their perspectives. And so that's really what you want out of a professional development workshop, no matter who's offering it, as a place where you can kind of feel safe to learn these new skills, and then have the confidence to go out and implement in the classroom.
Yeah, and PD, we talk about the importance of PD, and a plug here for cyber.org's professional development is that it's free. You're able to participate virtually. You're able to get access to the content of the curriculum at no cost. So, those who are listening onto this webinar, you don't have an excuse. Come spend an hour with us and get some professional development on that confidence. And And you'll be able to see firsthand some of the research that Callie has put together that Callie has collected and is showcasing, in our last statement.
That's a great resource too, when cost comes up as one of those barriers to implementation, right? Is that professional development's free, access to the curriculum's free. We're even giving away technology from time to time. And if you visit, the cyber.org website, you'll notice right now, through the fall months as teachers are heading back into the classroom, we're looking to give away some technology. We want to do it again as we enter the winter months and kind of just keep this cycle of technology giveaways. Just to, again, we want to eliminate those barriers to implementing what we think is good, rigorous curriculum in the classroom. So let's get some technology moving and get teachers the equipment they need so that they can back that up with the resources like curriculum and professional development.
Yeah, definitely. Cyber.org/technology grant. Go out and go apply for it.
Yeah, and that, for those of you that are listening, that closes on Monday, so for the first round, and then it'll open up back up again for a drawing, or not a drawing, but the grant award in December. A lot of this we've talked about has been related to curricular integration in the school day, but I think it's also worth mentioning, the role that extracurriculars play. How do you see that playing out to supplement a student's cyber education?
I'll chime in real quick as a classroom teacher who taught this in the classroom as a 8 to 3 subject. That's good to get some students. Again, high school teachers know that scheduling is always a concern. You have students who are interested, but because of other courses that they have to take, there's conflict with getting into those classes during the day. So there's got to be some opportunity for students to engage with this curriculum outside of the normal school day. And that could be before school, after school, on weekends. And we've participated in some of those. We support some of those. One example, comes to mind is a summer camp that we work with our friends over at the Virginia Department for the Blind and Vision Impaired and Department for Aging and Rehabilitative Services. What we've set up with them over the last 3 years, we couldn't do it this year because of COVID, but we did robotics camps where every student who participated got their own Bobot in a box, brand new, nothing but screws, bolts, nuts, and parts and pieces. And over the course of a week, they built them, and that usually happened within the first 2 hours. These kids were so quick at building bots. It's amazing. And then we would get into programming, and we talk about sensors, and we talk about the physics behind the sensors. Why does an ultrasonic sensor do what it does? Because it incorporates the speed of sound and whatnot. And by the end of the week, they've experienced nearly a year's worth of cyber literacy material. And most of them are working after 5 o'clock. They're there before 8 o'clock in the morning. It's a full day camp and it's residential, so they're doing other activities at night. But they all, from what I hear, want to get back to the classroom in the morning just to get back to their bots. And it's just been such a refreshing experience. And it lets me know that, as a public education teacher in Florida and Louisiana, you may have doubts about some students, but this content and those students I will hold them up to any comparison of any student in any classroom. They will definitely break the norm when it comes to what you expect a student to be able to do in robotics. And they are pushing boundaries. And I think the last stat was we've impacted over 50 students in that camp over 3 years, and it's 96 or 97% have moved on into cyber-related opportunities, whether it be continuing ed in 2-year, 4-year, or into the workplace. It's been a phenomenal program.
Well, and I think it's important there to emphasize that you never know when that seed of opportunity is going to get placed in that child's mind. And it could be in the math classroom where that student says, hey, I know what a gigabyte is, or it could be, at a camp that is targeting, blind and visually impaired students. And, the thing that, resonates with me is these students don't after school leave, or it's going to be, hey, listening it from their parents or one of their family members. So I think it's, you have to hear something how many times before it resonates with you. And I think that from a career awareness, perspective, that's really where we have to focus on ensuring that our students see it and all around them and experiencing these 21st century skills all around them.
Yeah, I mean, and that brings us right back to the ecosystem model. I mean, a healthy cyber education ecosystem is going to involve parents and community leaders and community organizations that are providing these extra opportunities for students.
What's the cliche of, it takes a village to raise a child? It takes an ecosystem to educate a child.
I think so. And, this was something that Edweek studied as well. They were asking about extracurricular opportunities, which I always say is the 3 C's, clubs, camps, competitions. And one of the things they found is that 71% of teachers thought that their students would have either a medium or high level of interest in some of these opportunities. And so they were pointing out that this is both an indicator of overall interest in cyber pathways. So how many students are interested in going further with their cyber education. These can be a great first step for students to explore that interest and kind of decide if they want to, pursue a certification or look at degrees or careers. But also it's an outcome. If you have strong curricular integration in the school day, then you would expect to see students developing an interest in these camps and clubs and competitions.
Yeah, and that's the point right there, Callie, is that this shouldn't come at the exclusion of classroom learning, right? This has to come in the integration of the classroom experience and the extracurricular experience. 71% are interested in extracurricular opportunities in the areas of cyber. That's a big number. We need to capitalize on that, and it can't come at the exclusion of classrooms.
Absolutely. Well, and as you kind of hinted at, we see teachers all across the country using our curriculum, both in the school day and in the after school program or in the camp. I think it works in both places, and we want to see, students, no matter where they are, to have access to the basics, in the school day and have access to kind of basic knowledge of cybersecurity, but also have the opportunity to go as deep as they want and as far as they want. I'm going to just, real briefly pull up this list because I think this is a really interesting graph from the Edweek Report. So they're asking teachers what kind of cybersecurity topics they've covered in the past year. And so as you can see, the things at the top are the things that were covered the most. So basic digital literacy, cyberbullying, coding, programming, and that's what gets taught the most. And then the more specialized topics. So when we get into artificial intelligence and systems engineering and cryptography, it's probably harder to find resources for. Teachers are probably less confident because that's super specialized. What do you make of this? Oh, Chuck, you're on mute.
Sorry, someone was knocking on my door.
Don't they know we're filming? We're having a webinar here. Come on.
We're having a webinar day early because there's a weather event happening tomorrow. So, there's such good opportunities on this list, right? When you talk about cyberbullying and cyber terrorism, look at that spike in middle school. 70% of middle school students are learning about cyberbullying and cyber terrorism, and that's awesome. We've got some of our thoughts on how to present that content, but teachers are doing that already, so that's great. It's those second half of the list, right? Like you mentioned, electricity and cyber law. Those are daunting topics, but we've figured out a way to kind of break them down into manageable classroom projects. Some of these don't translate well to virtual. When we talk about, what this new model of learning looks like, what this, next season that we're approaching of learning is going to look like. I'm not sure I'm going to want to send electricity projects home or labs home over the weekend, but I can definitely bring cyber law home. I can definitely bring conversations on artificial intelligence and systems engineering. So, give a look for those kinds of resources. Attend some of the professional development. We're working on virtual tools to bring teachers together, which hopefully will translate to the virtual classroom too. So the bottom half of the list just energizes me. I think there's so many great opportunities.
And this is why Chuck and I work so great together, is because the bottom of the list scares me to death. Because I look at, these different concepts that are not being taught. And I look at the opportunity that these present. And you can take a look at this list in a handful of ways. And one way that I like to look at this is, what are we providing an educator to help them teach some of these concepts? if you say, oh, cyber law, which if you think about it, cyber law is the law that helps protect us on a digital age that requires us to interact online. So how are we living, working, and playing in cyberspace? And how are we doing that ethically? How are we doing that safely? And how are we doing that to protect, the vulnerabilities that are out there? So when we talk about cyber law and we're only seeing, 11, 10, 5, that's scary. And so the fact that we need, and when I say we, I collectively mean as educators, need a set of guiding, a guiding framework, guiding standards that helps shape, okay, what are the concepts that I need to teach at the 5th grade to ensure that my students have a foundational cyber awareness or cybersecurity awareness? Or what are the fundamental skills and knowledge that's needed at the high school space to ensure that my students have a foundational skill set that takes them into an industry-based certification, or such as CompTIA's Security Plus, or Palo Alto's industry-based certification, or what do I need to go into a degree that is pursuant to going down a cybersecurity path into some kind of career. So one of the things that cyber.org is focusing on is the development, and we'll be doing this over the course of the next year with some incredible partners, the development of a national set of K-12 cybersecurity standards. So the topics like, cyber ethics, or topics like, artificial intelligence or cyber law or systems engineering or cryptography, the topics like that will be taught in these classrooms, and that fundamental understanding of these concepts will be taught. And not only will we identify, hey, this is where you should teach it, but we're going to backstop that with here are the resources to teach it. And that's where organizations like Cyber.org, or organizations like Parallax or Palo Alto Networks, Cybersecurity Academy, where friends of ours in this space are so important to ensuring that all of our students are cyber aware. I kind of have the goal of, world domination, as I smile and say that. Callie said she wasn't going to say it, so I figured I'm going to throw it in here at some point. My world domination aspect, world domination thought is every student's cyber literate. Yeah. Now, does that mean that every student is going to go be a cybersecurity, professional? No, but if the doctor has cyber literate background, or if the lawyer or the nurse or the firefighter or the fill in the blank job, whether the agriculture, the farmers out in our country, they need to be cyber literate as well. And so I look at this list and I see opportunity. I see opportunity that we need K-12 national cybersecurity standards when we see the numbers like this. I see the needs of resources that we can get into the hands of teachers for teaching these kinds of concepts. So absolutely, this data is incredible in helping shape what we see as the need for integration into the classroom, as Chuck mentioned earlier, the integration from a conceptual to inside the math, the science, and the English language arts classroom.
Yeah, well, and speaking of opportunity, I just want to pull up our last graph here that we were going to share today. And there's more graphs, more information, more data in that report too, if you want to look at it. But speaking of opportunity, I mean, what we see is that from this survey, students had high levels of interest in learning more about cybersecurity career awareness, which, if we come back to our fundamental mission, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make students cyber aware so that they can become a cyber literate workforce for tomorrow. So I think this is interesting to students. They want to learn more, but they don't have the awareness that they need. If you compare the two graphs, students don't have enough knowledge of what's required for a cybersecurity career, what kind of education and certifications they need to pursue. And so that's a challenge for us, but it's also an opportunity, I think.
Yeah, you want to go, Kevin? I'll take it.
You got it.
I love this graph also. These are two great graphs, Callie. This one, right, 75% of students have some interest in cybersecurity, but 67% don't have any awareness of careers in cybersecurity. So the question that begs asking is, how do we increase awareness? And there's a couple different ways of doing that. And we've talked about many of those steps today, including making teachers more comfortable with this kind of curriculum through, curriculum reviews, professional development, maybe a set of standards that are going to help guide their instruction in this area. But then also increasing opportunities for students to become aware of these, career opportunities. And that, again, can happen before, during, and after school, classroom curriculum, extracurricular activities, camps, and competitions. We support a lot of those with, we have some CTFs that we're running throughout the year. We have some camp opportunities and other methods of engagement, some robotics clubs. Make the teacher comfortable and give access to the students. No matter where it happens in their day, it's important that there's some awareness of cyber throughout their day. And those are my takes on that graph.
Yeah, my takes. There's two things that I take away on those charts, and I agree with Chuck. I love that chart because there's a lot of opportunity there. Yeah. And my first point is that the ecosystem. And to have an ecosystem, you don't have to be in a large metropolitan area. You can be in a very, very small rural community and develop an ecosystem. You don't necessarily have to be a state to develop an ecosystem. You can be a small community and develop an ecosystem, whether that's the pharmacy down the road, or whether that's the bank, or whether that's the general store. These are individuals who are coming together to have a passion about ensuring that cybersecurity education is at the forefront and paramount inside the classroom. And not only inside the classroom, and this is actually my point, that ecosystem must focus on educating the whole child. That ecosystem must focus on educating all aspects of that child's education career. And that includes the formal classroom. That's what happens inside the school from 8 to 3. That includes the informal education process. That includes what happens in the after-school programs. That's what happens in the community centers, whether you're in the Boy Scouts or the Girl Scouts. And then lastly, it's the other part of that is at home. What are we doing to ensure that our parents have confidence in having conversations with their students about what they want to be when they grow up? So as an ecosystem, we have to focus on educating the whole child in all aspects of the education process. Point one. Point two is that we must focus on equity and diversity in cybersecurity education. In an industry that is predominantly a white male, that's not solving the gap that we have. When we look at over 500,000 cybersecurity jobs that are opening today, and in the next year and a half, that number is going to increase to 1.8, almost 2 million jobs. The white males are not going to solve this. The large high socioeconomic population centers are not going to solve this alone. We need to ensure that we are going to those cybersecurity deserts. We need to ensure that we are going to those low socioeconomic areas and investing in those schools, investing in those community centers, and giving confidence to the educators, to the community leaders, to ensuring that these resources that we provide, the cyber.org resources, the cyber.org technology that we have, that those are getting into the hands of the students who would otherwise have no idea about a cybersecurity career, a cybersecurity even degree. First-time college students who are going into cybersecurity and going into cybersecurity degrees. And we've seen, pilot data that says that 4 times as many students who are introduced to our content curriculum are going into a cybersecurity degree program. It's data like this and the data like that we see in this Edweek report that's really of our call to action to say we need to educate the whole child as the ecosystem. And 2, we need to ensure that we're focusing on the equity and diversity in the cybersecurity education space.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think all of us in this ecosystem, wherever you fall, whether you're an educator, whether you're nonprofit, whether you're industry, government, we all have a role to play. And so I think this Edweek report helps to give us the data we need to make better decisions, and to continue to find those opportunities for growth and build upon them. So we recognize that this is just the beginning of the conversation, and you guys are here, so I'm going to turn it over to our live hosts, whoever they may be, because we are recording this a day in advance, to continue the conversation, do some question and answer, and hear from you guys. So thanks for being here.
And we'll kick it over to fill in the blank.
Thanks, Kevin, for throwing it back to us. We've got about 5 more minutes left. We were scheduled to run 45 minutes, and it's 2:40 right now, Central Time. So wherever you're dialing in from, we appreciate you being here and listening to the presentation. In the chat, we shared a couple of links, including the report from Edweek Research Center, and also the link that Kevin shouted out during the event for the technology grant. I can post them again. We're here now for a little bit to take some questions. Again, a couple shout outs to the folks who are with us today, including Andy, Kara, Matt, Emily, Jill, Jillian, and science teacher. Thank you for joining us. Looking outside, the weather's clearing a little bit in northern Louisiana, northwest Louisiana where we are. But if you're in the Arkansas, Missouri, points east, connect the dots all the way to New York, you're getting some wet weather. It's going to be there over the next couple of days, so hang in there. We survived, so you'll be all right. I got a question. Andy has asked if any of our PD sessions are available on demand or are they all live? We hosted a number of summer workshops. We tried to record where possible. Some of them have been made available through the Canvas pages that we had set up to host those events. Others we're working on making available, but the short answer to your question would be no. We're not yet offering a library of on-demand professional development. It should be a no-brainer, right? With as much as we host professional development, we just need to start recording them, but then editing them and adding sound and captions if we need to, and yada yada. So we just haven't gotten there yet, but great idea. And I think it's certainly a no-brainer as we move into this, more virtual and asynchronous environment. So, Callie, thoughts on that?
As we're doing virtual PD, we're putting all of the new events up on our website under events, so you can find whatever's upcoming. Right now, we've just finished a whole bunch of summer PD, and we're starting to put up our fall PD. So be sure and check that out as we keep adding.
Yeah, and the ones that we've hosted, we typically make available to the participants, right, so that they can rewind and get caught back up before the next session. But we hadn't had a process of making them public yet. So I think, Andy, that might if we just start recording them and being purposeful about it. Jillian, the start date for one of our partnerships is with Louisiana Tech and their Cyber Ed certificate. This is a 4-course sequence that runs for approximately 1 year. So 4 asynchronous courses are delivered online, 1 course at a time, that runs a 10-week quarter based on Louisiana Tech's calendar. For more information on this, I'll pull up the link in just a second. But the next cohort should be kicking off. Soon. I haven't heard from Louisiana Tech on that. There is a cohort in process, and that next class starts around September 9th. But I know they are taking applications. Erica J at lawtech.edu is the email for that. So let me pull up the flyer on the cohort.
I just threw the email address that Chuck.
I think it's a K, unfortunately. But
okay.
Okay. So I don't know if you noticed any of the Easter eggs during the video. We wanted to make you feel like it was live. Kevin's sign falling. I had a knock door. Kelly had emails going off. It was a day yesterday, trying to get ready for storm prep. But it's all good. We're still here. So, and most of us have power and internet. Where is Claire, do you know where the Cyber Ed certificate lives these days? I don't want to put you on the spot. I apologize.
No, you're good. I'm trying to think of the easiest place to send you to.
Yep. So it's on
Give me
professional
just a moment.
development.
I'll send you a link.
Yep. It's on the page called professional development. I might have laggy internet because I'm scrolling my web page and, well, there's a storm, but it's right here. No, got my hair. Oh, no, that wasn't it. Wow. Things just got really slow in Benton. Here's our professional development page in the chat. And if you scroll down, it's the first article and there's a learn more button there. Thanks, Julian. Anyone else? We're at time. We're certainly happy to stay longer with anyone who wants to visit. If you have questions about weather, we can pull up maps and we can start going down that rabbit hole. In the meantime, we appreciate you coming to pay a visit. Stay tuned to our events page. Everything's posted there and it links to Eventbrite. All of our professional development that's hosted virtually is free. The access to our curriculum is free, and it's all now located in a one-stop shop, as we like to call it, at cyber.org. So please visit the website, bookmark the website, take a look at all the new features that are there. You can send your administrators there and get curriculum descriptions and information on what the content is that we're offering. And again, of course, sign up for a workshop. So one more question just in under the wire. Science teacher says, I'm starting a new club, trying to pull in students outside of the standard GT STEM subset and make cybersecurity more mainstream. Any suggestions? I'd love to know what grade levels you're talking about. If we're talking about high school, we have a cybersecurity course that can be adapted to 7th and 8th. So our cybersecurity course is based on the Security Plus certification through CompTIA, so it may be a little high level for 7th and 8th graders. But having said that, cyber literacy is available in our library, and that's based on a robotics platform using the CyberBot, which actually is based on the microbit. So if you've done any work with microbit, take a look at cyber literacy. Also take a look at cyber fundamentals. We're doing some new cybersecurity content with the microbit through our course called Cyber Fundamentals, as well as a partnership with Parallax Robotics for Education out of California. If you take a look at microbit and then head over to the Parallax site for educators, there's some great resources there. You've got our contact info. Please reach out and I'll give you direct links in the interest of time. I'm happy to share them. All right.
Before we go, I want to put in a little pitch for our next month webinar. We're doing webinars every month, so stay tuned. The next one is going to be Thursday, September 17th, same time, and it's going to be focused on initiatives to reach out to military children. So if you live in an area that's near a military base, I think this will be especially useful for you, but I think there will be ideas that you can glean no matter what.
Cool. I was almost going to have time to copy and paste that link, but my keyboard, there it is. So science teacher in the link is that Parallax site, which has all these great microbits cybersecurity resources. Callie, thanks for helping us through this yesterday and getting this all recorded. Claire, thanks for hanging out today and producing. The rest of our cyber.org team, I hope they're hunkering down and safe and everybody's still got a roof over their heads and family and friends. And for all of you out there, I hope COVID's not hampering too much your plans for a new school year. We wish you the best of luck. We want you to know that we're by your side. If you have any questions at all on implementation or virtualization opportunities, please reach out. And stay tuned to the cyber.org website. That's where you're going to find all the latest and greatest that's going on here. And with that, I think it's time to bid you adieu. Have a great day, everybody.